Let's talk about aging. I've written a lot about aging and I've advised people to try and do their best to hang in there. We're very interested in what we call health span, that's saying staying fit and healthy right until your final years, in fact your final day. It's one of my sayings. We all want to be partying on our last day on earth. But there's another very good reason to keep yourself going. Really struggle to get going and keep going, live as long as you can, because there are new developments coming out all the time. You never know what's around the corner. Nearly a couple of 100 years ago, antiseptic surgery came in, and before that time people died like flies. If they had to have surgery, infections became common and it would wipe you out. Only a little shy of 100 years ago we got antibiotics. By 1945 penicillin was available commercially, and that must have saved hundreds of millions, if not billions of lives. So you never know what's coming along, and it'd be a great shame, wouldn't it, to die just before some new discovery, some new invention that would have given you an extra 10 or 20 or even 50 years of glorious living. Obviously, we don't want to live forever. I know there's biohackers out there that just don't want to die. And I think it means they haven't got any spiritual basis for living. They think of themselves as just a piece of meat clunking along, and they want to keep this piece of meat breathing and pumping blood for as long as they can. A daft view. But they take all these weird, extreme things. They miss some important points. One is that diet and nutrition is probably the number one anti-ager, and they don't give it enough emphasis. Yes, there are plenty of biohackers out there that follow really weird diets, but they're missing the important point, which I discovered 40 or 50 years ago, which is we all have different stressor foods. I call them, the bad ones, I call them bandit foods, because they rob you of health and vitality and energies. These are the ones that we should find and remove. Anyway, some time ago I read an interesting article, 2011. It was published in a British, almost flippant scientific journal called New Scientist. I say flippant because it's very quirky. Anyway, this was about a piece by Professor Michael Rose at the University of California, Irvine. And his article was entitled, "Life Begins at 90. Say what? Yeah, we know. We used to be a saying, life begins at 40. And of course, having gone well past 40, I can tell you that's true. And by the time you're in your 60s, most people have then got themselves sorted out about what life's about and what meaning it has and so on. But life begins at 90? What is he saying? Well, what he's saying essentially, and the essence of the argument, was that eventually aging slows down. Once you get past 90, it sort of levels off. A person at 99 is no more likely to die. And I'm talking now about probability of dying, all right? Not the number of survivors, but if you plot... In fact, Michael Rose quoted some early British statisticians. They published in 1939. Now, obviously, 1939 wasn't a good year for science. That was the year World War II was declared. Nevertheless, it's there in the literature, and as I said, was promptly forgotten. And it showed the point I'm telling you about, which is that eventually aging slows down, and even to a slight degree can go into reverse. Now, look at these two charts. The one on the left is flies. I'll come back to that in a moment. And you can see that eventually the probability of dying will level off. The older the flies got, the less the probability of dying, or it became equal. After a time, it didn't increase. We're more interested in humans, of course, and if you look at that picture on the right, you'll see after around 102, it might even go into reverse. If you make it to 101, 102, after that, you're probably less likely to die than a typical person around then. But whatever you think, you can see that both of these charts are showing somewhat that the speed of aging slows down dramatically and the probability of dying. The only reason for the flies is that you can go through hundreds of generations in a matter of years, whereas with humans, it would take centuries to go through, 2 or 3 more generations. But it's an important point, isn't it? It's making a strong point. Just try and stay in there and hang in there. And interestingly, coming back to the point I made earlier, Professor Michael Rose also showed that what you eat is crucial. He had some very good statistics and figures showing that the familiar Stone Age diet, Paleolithic diet, I think I've told you before, I got christened in Britain and Europe. Anyway, the other side of the pond, I was one stage christened, I was on the BBC, christened the Stone Age doctor. And I used to joke, well, I'm not that old, surely. But I was associated with that diet. And we know it's the hunter-gatherer's diet. It's our most natural diet. And the other food, the new foods, what I call farmer foods, like cereals, grains, dairy food, and then all the fancy things like tea, coffee, alcohol, and so on, are all not exactly hunter-gatherers' foods. So if we try and live like hunter-gatherers, now do remember, you can't go and buy hunter-gatherer foods in the supermarket anymore. You can, give it a shot, and it's best to choose meat over starchy preparations, but the meat isn't raised in the same way. And we're talking wild game, going back 20, 30,000 years. A typical animal they'd bring down as game and eat would be 5, 6, 7% fat. Modern farmed and domesticated animals are anything up to 30 or 40% fat. But nevertheless, you can approximate, and it will certainly do you good. And that's where I come back to what I was talking about, bandit foods. There's one important teaching principle that's missed by all the pseudo-whiz kids that are out there blogging and missed by the biohackers, which is the good stuff is different for everybody. Everybody has these bandit foods. And it can be anything. True, grains are common, nightshades are common, dairy produce, of course, very common. But almost anything, well, literally anything can do it. I've had people being seriously ill with things like lettuce, banana, almonds, carrots, parsnips. You think these are all healthy foods and we should all eat them. Well, not all of us. No, you have to figure out what is right for you, and those are the things that you follow. And if you get my book, The Bandit Foods, I wrote a much bigger book years ago, first called The Food Allergy Plan. I republished it when I came to America as Diet-Wise, and even now it's been reborn again as One Diet for Life, because I do believe this is an important journey that everyone should try and make at least once in a lifetime. You should try and figure out what are the right foods for you, because if you do, it will lower inflammation in the system, and we all know that inflammation is a huge aging problem. The less inflammation you can have going in your body, the longer you're going to live. So it's well worth figuring out how to do it. So I wrote this thinner version. I know over the last 20 or 30 years, people's attention span has just come way down and down till you've now got some of them at the attention span of a gnat, as the joke goes. But nevertheless, it's short enough to give you the basic information, but it's a fairly quick read. And I highly recommend that you do undertake this journey, as I say, at least once in a lifetime. Every person should try and figure out what their bad foods are and get rid of them, of course. Stop eating them. You don't need to do these extreme weirdy things that the biohackers are doing, like, swallowing methylene blue and dyeing their brain blue. So, mountains of supplements. Some are taking 100, 150 different supplement tablets. They're injecting themselves with weird stuff, implanting weird things in their bodies. They're desperate to survive. But almost nobody's teaching this simple, important fact that if you eat the right things, your body will happily continue for quite a long time. And whereas, 50 or 60 years ago, typically a person would be dead at 65. That's why they picked it as the pension age. They award you a pension round about the time when they expected you to die. Well, of course, now a lot of people have gone on into what we call the third age. First age is, childhood and schooling and growing up, and then the second age is your adult life and professional career. The third age is when you retire, and what happens after that. Well, more and more people, a vast majority of people now are falling into this third age, and it's changing the whole spectrum of human experience. And it's important that if you're in the third age or about to enter it or are already in it, that you try and look after yourself, because, as I said, you never know what's around the corner. Some miracle new development, but we don't even need miracle new developments, really. If you just follow the simple routine, follow the science, as it were, and live as we should live, naturally, eating whole foods, avoid manufactured foods, eat a hunter-gatherer's diet, not a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet especially. Now, I know if you go on the internet, you'll find all sorts of people publishing stories about how vegetarians live longer. And I'm not arguing with that, because one of the things I know about vegetarians is they're careful. They care about what they eat. They eat whole foods, and they don't go in for junk. And that's one of the important factors in their life. But eating meat is no harm. Meat and fish, lots of us do it, and we're no worse for it. And yes, by the way, you will see repeatedly, red meat is bad for you. No, it isn't. I've never seen a red meat study showing red meat is bad for you that didn't also include junk meat. Processed meat and sausages and hams and salamis and weird stuff. And you eat all that synthetic crap, and then they lump it with red meat and say, see, meat is bad for you. No, it's not. Mother Nature knows exactly what she's doing, and she wants us to live on meat, fish, fruit, vegetables, and drink water. Well, it doesn't have to be plain water. You can make it herb teas. Anyway, okay, good health tip for you is hang in there. Don't die too soon. You never know what's coming. If you'd like more health tips like this, then please subscribe to the channel, and there'll be regular tips and videos coming along like this, which I'm sure you'll find A, fascinating, and B, it's not what everybody else is teaching. If it's boring on the internet, everyone's copying everybody else, and they're all doing keto, and they're all doing low carbs and high carbs and this, that, and the other diets. I'm not saying none of these have merit. They all have some kind of merit. But what I am saying, they're all missing the point, which is everyone is different. This is the big difference between orthodox medicine and real holistic alternative medicine. We say that everyone is different. Orthodox medicine said everyone's the same. You're all average. And of course, it's nonsense. There is no such thing as an average person. There's not one single average person walking on this earth. Thinking about it, yes, there are a lot of people of average height, yes, a lot of people of average weight, average age, average this, average that, but taking them all together, there's no such thing as an average person. Okay, take care, look after yourself, and live long. Thank you.